Welcome to this edition of Mike and Mychajliw. Clearly, this is not Mike, a way better looking version of Mike Speraza sitting in the chair. And Horan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is great. I'm so excited to be here.
I feel like this is a performance at Shays. You get like the playbill.
Maybe.
In this performance is Ann Horan for Mike Speraza. Well, how are you? How are things?
I'm doing great. This is my debut podcast, so it's always a fun thing to do something new.
Really? God bless America. Here we are. Speraza, I think we should just give him the pink slip now.
For sure. No, he's got to stay home with his baby. I mean,
can you believe that, though? The excuse, like he's not here because he had a baby.
A baby. I missed my one daughter's birthday because I was having our other son, and she never let me live that down. Ever. Because I was in the hospital because their birthdays are March 7th and March 8th. And she was just like, I can't believe that you missed. I was like, I was a little busy. So
like giving birth. I mean, the excuse, Speraza, I think he's either a Democratic socialist or just doesn't want to come to work. I mean, I think he's going to be replaced. So get comfortable in that chair.
I like this chair. And I got the lead chair, too. So you're still sitting in the co-pilot.
I know. I got to play second fiddle here to Ann. I maybe it's Catholic guilt. I just can't sit in the big boy chair.
Well, I mean, I am superior. So
that's true. That's true.
Someone has told me that I am always right, so it is a thing.
That's right. Certainly wasn't me. But on that level, I can't believe you're in a good mood after that Bills game.
Oh, I know.
Heartbreaking.
I had such a bad feeling about it. I actually texted a friend and said, I am so nervous. And I was never nervous before Bills games. And it was just like one of those overwhelming feelings. And from the first snap until the end, it was just a horrible game.
Yeah, I went to the game and I sat right behind the Bengals bench. So I had to hear that stupid Bengals chant like the entire game. And I'm not even going to repeat it because like I'm ready to set myself on fire after the game on Saturday or the playoff game on Sunday. But I take the view of I cannot stand Bills fans who say, well, there's always next year. It was a great season. I take the position of the season was an absolute failure because they did not win the Super Bowl.
Well, I just think that at times this team is so winning by just such a small margin that that's not a Super Bowl team. This year they were eking out too many wins, and our record did show wins, and I just don't think that they were winning by a dominant margin to be able to do it. But I mean, when you're talking about when it's 14-7 and the Cincinnati they're down 3rd and 4. And you look at the screen of the television, and you only see one linebacker in the screen of the television, and you know they're only going for a few yards. Everybody's deep. Like, what is Leslie Frazier doing? I don't understand it.
Right. I mean, I'm not a football coach, but I'm thinking, well, if you give them enough space, they're going to get a first down.
I mean, if it's 3rd and 4, it was 14-7. The game was in it was possible at that point.
But it's also one of those two. Again, I take a very harsh black and white look at it. You know, out of the 32 teams in the NFL, every single one starts a season and say, we're going to win the Super Bowl. I don't care who you are. That's why you play the game. So I'm not one for these moral...
I don't think Chicago did. Just saying. I don't think Chicago did this year.
Or at least they should in theory.
In theory.
In theory they should.
Think positive, but they're also realists as well.
Right, we're the Bears. But I do think it's an absolute failure for every single team that doesn't win the Super Bowl. And look, the Bills themselves are actually very aware of it. I mean, they lost to the Bengals 27-10. Now, Matt Milano, he's usually like a quiet, reserved linebacker, but he was very blunt on why the Bills basically blew it.
There was no real energy, juice, no momentum. Usually we'll get a stop, offense will score, defense will make a turnover, something to bring some change of momentum, but there was none of that this week.
Well, maybe we can talk about something better, like banning gas stoves in New York State. That's a more positive thing to talk about.
How that transition goes, but
it was terrible. It was absolutely horrible.
Listen, this is my first time, and that was a bad transition.
But here's a good one. There's two transitions going into banning gas stoves in New York State.
Okay.
Number one, at the game, they had these Bills workers on the field with a gas-powered, the equivalent of a leaf blower, basically spraying all the yard lines. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. New York State is the lead agency when it comes to building the new stadium. Are they going to make these guys have, plug in and have an electric leaf blower? And also, too, another interesting tidbit of info about New York State, they're the ones that are basically building the new Bill Stadium. And the heat source for the field is going to be natural gas.
Right. I just think that their ludicrousy is going to be exposed just tremendously when it finally comes down to the nuts and bolts of actually powering our world. Our society, everything is powered by coal, is powered by gasoline, it's powered by nuclear energy. Like you can't. Electricity is powered by coal, natural gas.
Right.
Like it's the most ridiculous thing to have these concepts to be able to say, yeah, we're going to eliminate all these sources of energy and have everything be electric. Electricity comes from some place, I thought. It wasn't
right.
I mean,
well, but also too, remember the blizzard? I mean, I had my generator going. I was able to heat my home with literally my baby and my young kids, run by gasoline, natural gas. I mean, New York City, I know their sanitation department actually bought electric garbage trucks,
right?
And they threw plows on the front,
And they couldn't push the snow.
They couldn't push the snow, and that's New York City. So can you imagine how we would have managed the blizzard
Buffalo? No chance.
Right, with everything electric powered? So Governor Kathy Hochul was in Buffalo. She was having a press conference at Buffalo State College, and she was basically asked about her proposal to ban gas stoves in new buildings in a few years. And take a listen for yourself. She's had a really bizarre answer and response.
Not taking away anyone's gas stove. They're not being shut down. They're going to continue for sale. So there's also a lot of hyperbole and exaggeration around what's being proposed, but it also focuses on New York State as part of being a leader to make sure that we can handle these storms in the present, but also averting them in the future.
I have no idea what the hell she's talking about. I don't understand that at all.
She's like starting to speak Biden.
And it's not a compliment. It's not a compliment at all. I have no idea what the governor just said.
Oh my goodness. What's the guy that oh my gosh, I'm forgetting what his name is, but the fact that she's even trying to justify taking gas stoves away to replace them with electric stoves that are then powered by natural gas. Like, really stop and think about that for a second.
Right.
You're taking away natural gas stoves to be powered by electric stoves, which is in the backside powered by natural gas.
I mean, the irony, too, like you think of the Buffalo Bills, Terry Pagula, he was able to buy the Bills because he made billions of dollars in fracking. And I have no idea what the governor's talking about. I mean, she sounded like Beaker from the Muppets, like just no idea what she was saying. But it's true. She put legislation in that in 2025 and eventually 2030, you cannot buy any structure, a home or build an apartment building with a natural gas stove. So in theory, are they going to come to my house in Elma, guns drawn, and like haul away my gas stove? No, of course not. But anything built, it's absolutely true. She wants to ban natural gas in buildings in New York.
Do you remember when it was COVID and there was Thanksgiving or Christmas and they were saying you cannot have gatherings of over 10 people or something, or we're going to come in and like break everything up? It's like the same concept.
Right.
They can't do it. So this is just like flexing their muscles, puffing their chest to try to say that they're going to be in charge, and enough people are going to be logical enough and say this is just ridiculous.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because that exact point was talked about on Fox News. Fox Across America, it's a podcast host, Jimmy Fallon. He actually talked about that, and we're going to play the clip in a second. And it was such an excellent point that I never thought of, that basically those on the left, the Kathy Hochuls of the world, the Joe Bidens of the world, banning natural gas and banning stoves, it's like basically the Trojan horse. Mm-hmm. So they're going to start and see how far they can get away with, okay, we're going to ban stoves. We're going to ban natural gas in that respect. And then the natural progression for them is saying, okay, coming up next, we are absolutely positively going to then, ban gas vehicles.
Well, it is just one of those things that when you try to outlaw something and that our society has become so dependent on, and then you're going to just like all of a sudden just carte blanche, just lop it off. Like it's like you just can't do it. It's like men becoming women by just getting, their appendages lopped off. Like it's just not a possibility.
Right.
Like you just can't do it.
It's a great analogy. I love it. I'm going to move a little farther away from you on this side of the table, but I did find the clip. Here it is. Jimmy Fallon, Fox Across America podcast. Again, he makes the point that it's a Trojan horse. They're going to start with the gas stoves and then move on to gas cars.
Well, listen, I'm surprised anybody even needs a stove, because I was told by Al Gore the fish are coming out of the ocean fully cooked. Everything was boiling now. Who even needs a stove anymore? But is anybody surprised by the hypocrisy of this? No. Here's a newsflash. No one pushing a climate initiative is following those climate initiatives. We always call out the jets. We always call out the stoves. The closer for climate change is banning gas vehicles. So they're easing them in with the stove. If they can get you to shake your head yes that the stove is a problem, voila, in comes the closer, which is banning gas vehicles. At which point we're all on the bus. Good night, everybody. Tip your waitress.
I don't really understand, seriously, what is the problem with gas stoves now? Like, can you explain that to me?
Now it makes perfect sense if that's kind of like the left sticking their toe in the water and saying, okay, they make the analogy, well, you can ban a gas stove, next are cars.
But what is the Kool-Aid that the people that are believing this are drinking that they understand or think that this is going to save our environment? What is the thing that it's doing wrong?
And I also think what happened was some like extreme left-wing public think tank. And of course, they came out with a study that tried to link like asthma and all of these breathing-related illnesses in children on gas stoves. And they basically worked backwards. Mm-hmm. Okay, what can we do to scare the hell out of people and say gas stoves are bad? Oh, it's killing kids. And then the media, of course, never checks. They don't check the data or check the people that did the study, of course, realizing they're funded by a Soros-type major entity. And, of course, so that's the kind of downhill slope that we're going on. But Kathy Hochul, and speaking of her and making that transition into COVID, like what are people thinking drinking the Kool-Aid? There's a couple items to talk about here in New York State. Governor Kathy Hochul, it's coming back up that they're still talking about at the soonest possible way they can do it, of New York State passing legislation that would force children to get vaccinated in order to attend schools in New York State. And now New York City is coming out with data that 12,000 New York City government employees, folks that work for the government, basically lost their jobs. They got fired because they refused to get the jab. And now about a few thousand of those employees went to court, and they're
winning.
And they're winning. They're getting their jobs back.
And back pay.
And back pay. Yeah,
Good for them.
It's the same law firm, but there's multiple judges that are doing this. Now, it comes in light very recently, last week, where Dr. Leanna Wen, she wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post. She's a CNN contributor that basically said COVID deaths were being overreported, meaning at the height of the crisis, people were dropping dead of cancer, gunshot wounds,
motorcycle accidents, shark bites.
Right. And if you had COVID at the time, that's how your death was labeled.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not going to be like a tinfoil conspiracy person, but there's also, sometimes people think that a lot of those tests maybe were laced a little bit with the COVID just to get some extra money. Because as soon as you tie some financial gain to a hospital that is going to say, if you have a COVID death, you're going to get remunerated by, X amount of money. What do you think they're going to do? Everybody's trying to fill their pockets. I mean, look at Fauci. My goodness, the man changes his tune every time he gets $100,000 in his pocket. So, I mean, you dangle money in front of people, they change everything.
Well, and hospitals are really hurting too during COVID because the big moneymaker for hospitals are elective surgeries,
right?
Which they could not do during the COVID crisis. I mean, even like just basic healthcare necessities. People with cancer were not going to Roswell Park or other different hospitals, I mean, for their basic cancer treatment because they could not go to the hospital. So they had to make up that money some way, somehow. And of course, as you mentioned, there was a federal reimbursement basically for people with COVID, people dying of COVID. They shot up the numbers. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. I mean, were you shocked? A week ago when this doctor goes, oh, by the way, 2 years later, we overreported it.
Well, I'm only shocked because I'm afraid for her life. I really think that she should not be out in public. She should have taste testers. If she's going to keep running her mouth like that, I'm telling you, somebody in maybe the Clinton Foundation might off her the way that Epstein got off.
Is she friends with Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton?
I don't know. Maybe not so friendly.
Well, and I do want to go back just to show and so our listeners can just remember and never forget This is an older video, but I want to take you back into the mindset of all of these jab zealots. You know, those who are just obsessed with forcing the jab on people, and they still are.
I know.
Obsessed with putting the jab in people. So Chris Hopkins is the new Prime Minister of New Zealand. Back in 2021, he was their health minister. I mean, listen to this guy. He was saying that the government is going to hunt down people that refuse to get the jab.
I want every New Zealander to come forward, but human behaviour suggests that there will be some people that we have to actually really go out and look for, and some of that may spill into next year. But our commitment is everyone will have the opportunity to get the vaccine by the end of the year. Everyone will, but I can't say that, you know, that we're not going to have some hesitant people or some people who just haven't come forward that we don't have to go out and find next year.
This guy's insane.
I don't understand it. I mean, there's studies now. I just don't understand why they're still pushing it so hard. I mean, you sent a picture of a postcard that was sent from Albany to your house saying, if it's time. No, it said something. I thought it was so funny how it was like so contradictory. It is time. If you're due, go get your second shot or go get your booster.
Your fifth booster.
It's like, I don't understand where they're. What's the reasoning and why we're still pushing this thing when there's so much data out right now. I just saw a study this morning. It said 700,000 people were studied. 700,000 people. It's a ton of people in the UK, I believe. And it proved that if you were double, like you had 2 shots and a booster, you were 27 times more likely to get COVID. And if you had a third booster, you were like similarly higher rate to actually die from COVID getting it. But the people that have natural immunity, it goes far and wide.
Right.
Like there's people that had the SARS-1, like had a natural immunity. 19 years later, they're proving that they still have immunity towards SARS.
Wow, 20 years later.
20 years later, and these people are getting boosted every 2 months?
Yeah, I mean, even going to the Bills game against the Bengals, the playoff game, there was a sign literally at the front gate, and I'm paraphrasing here because I read it quickly going in. It said, if you're feeling ill, don't be a COVID spreader, go home.
No way. How
many people do you think are like 20 feet from the gate?
Yeah, no.
You spent a couple $100.
He's right. I should go home.
Sorry, guys. I'm going to watch from the parking lot. I'm going to go home.
Especially since I just broke a couple tables. I'm just going to, it's not happening.
Absolutely not. Well, before we go to our live guest, it's a huge story out of Florida where the record number of people are leaving New York State for Florida. Just two more points of liberal hypocrisy. Dick Durbin, U.S. Senator, basically, you know, thankfully the media is finally holding President Biden accountable for having documents. So classified documents at his house.
Well, I don't know how accountable they have an angle, of course.
Yeah, to get rid of the guy.
Yeah, get rid of him and So
don't you think? Again, you mentioned the tinfoil conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
I actually do think there is some kind of a political play here to basically say, okay, Trump's not going to be the Republican nominee and Biden's not going to be the Democratic nominee.
Correct.
But I thought it was hilarious on the Sunday talk shows, Dick Durbin, when Trump was found to have classified documents, he went crazy. And the media's like, wait a second, pal, you did the same.
It's an outrage. It is a literal outrage for the president to take this important information down to his home in Florida and then store it in a closet with traffic, people back and forth in his resort and golf course is an outrage.
Is it also an outrage for the current president to have what appears to be multiple classified documents in multiple locations?
At its heart, the issue is
Crickets.
the same. Those documents should not have been in the personal possession of either Joe Biden or Donald Trump.
And that's where the Democrats are jammed up. They're absolutely jammed up because they went after President Trump hardcore like that. Mm-hmm. Hardcore like that. And yet now the shoe's on their foot, and they're basically doubled down. And then the last literally moment of liberal hypocrisy. I love libs of TikTok.
Oh my gosh, they're the best.
I love them. And so, you know, I think we're going to start doing like liberal lunatic of the week. We had it on the radio show on Saturday with yours truly and Hayflick, and it was pretty funny. But this is teacher Case Anderson. Goes by the moniker Lord Rainbow Sky on TikTok. I just wanted to play this because I found this humorous, and I just thought, you know what? Our podcast listeners would love it too. Melts down because one student won't call her by her proper pronouns and actually filed a complaint with Human Resources and the school counselor. This is a teacher, someone who is educating your children. Take a listen.
But when I mentioned the fact that he's misgendering me on purpose, I was told, well, some religions, they don't have to do that because some religions don't agree with that, so they don't have to respect that. At a public school. Now, I don't know if this kid is religious. I don't think he is, but the counselor sure is. And she made it obvious without directly saying it that she doesn't agree with who I am or my existence, so that's fun. And I hope she has the day she deserves. That's all I'm going to say.
Was she tearing up?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Like
I was like, what is happening? And I thought she was waiting to talk to somebody. She was actually tearing up and gathering herself.
Sucking her thumb in the fetal position because someone won't say she or ma'am or whatever the pronoun is.
And then she goes to the principal, basically, to go rat on a student. Like, my kids were always, snitches get stitches, man. You take care of it in-house. I'm sorry, I'm probably not really accepted nowadays, but that was
hilarious.
how it was handled within my 4 kids. The snitches got stitches. You handle it.
But talk
to the principal.
These are the people who are supposed to be educating our children.
I can't even. But you see, there's a huge. Loma sent me a graph today of the enormous spike in home education for student elementary school and primary schools.
And can you imagine how big it's going to spike in New York State if there's a vax mandate?
I know.
Can you imagine?
They're not going to have a vax mandate. There's no proof to it.
Oh, mark my words. I'm telling you. Don't you remember Kathy Hochul during the debate with Lee Zeldin where they asked her, will you implement this? And she goes, at this time, we're not looking at it. Now is the time because there's a new legislature. The Democrats control everything. But we're going to be going to our live interview now. And it was a huge story that I saw in the New York Post. The New York Post broke this story. I thought this was really interesting about people leaving the People's Republic of New York for Florida. So what they did was they did a search of people getting a driver's license.
Yes.
So according to the New York Post, 65,000 people ditched their New York State driver's license and then registered in Florida. It's a record number. It was 62,000 last year, so it went up by 3,000 people. It's up almost 50% since 2017. And, of course, New York's not alone. New Jersey, California, Illinois, Pennsylvania, they all fled to Florida in record numbers. Mm-hmm. Joining us on the live line now is Dave and Kelly Niles, former Buffalo and Western New York residents. They are now in De Leon Springs, Florida. That's on the East Coast, just west of Daytona Beach. They work in real estate and were formerly from our neck of the woods and now live down there. Folks, thanks so much for joining us. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
How you doing, guys?
Good. Well, I could be better after that Bills loss, but other than that.
At least you guys have sunshine down there, right?
Could be.
Yeah. Is there like a Bills backers bar in your neck of the woods, or did you folks just watch it at home and then start your car in the garage after?
The second usually comes with being a Bills fan, but actually there are more Bills backer bars than you could shake a stick at down here. They are everywhere. And we actually just had one open up 5 minutes from us, and it's grown right along. We're getting 100, 150 people every game, no problem.
Well, that's convenient for your day drinking problem, so it works out well.
That's perfect.
Which comes with being a Bills fan.
Exactly.
So take us through your journey, because I know you folks still have family in like Hamburg, in the South towns. Take us from your journey of making the decision of, okay, like the many people who have fled Western New York and New York State for Florida, of, you know what, we're going to pack it up and try real estate or a new life literally in the Sunshine State.
Initially, well, New York is tax how, as we all know, amongst other things nowadays. We initially, it was more about the change of weather, just because I was a contractor as well in the real estate, and just the daily grind of the weather up there was our first push. Taxes and everything else, and that became, it became the icing on the cake. And especially when we moved down here in 2019, as you're all aware, shortly after that, the whole COVID hell broke loose and just made things even worse. But really the push was, the initial welcoming was the weather, and we never looked back, especially after everything that's transpired since.
And we really didn't have a plan in the beginning. My mom has snowbirds. see snowbirds in Cape Coral. And we snowbirded for, about 2 or 3 years prior to us making the decision on moving down here.
Mm-hmm. So Florida has become, like you said, it's become the migration hub. And, 65,000 New York licenses transferred to Florida in last year alone, only second to California, that's number one. These states are really self-proclaimed left-wing, lunatic, liberal states. And are those people bringing their morals and their voting habits to Florida, or are they people that are more fleeing those states that they want to have a more open and smaller government type of lifestyle?
We don't, where we are, we're in the central Florida area. We are what I would consider more the working class stiff area, where the farther south you go, the age goes up and you move into more snowbirds. Our area, no, you see Trump flags and you see, you're just more of that. We haven't seen any of that throughout our area, and hopefully we don't. So to be honest, no, it's just
it's a lot of happy people fleeing New York and happy to be in Florida with, basically everything being open.
Right.
It's such a different lifestyle down here. And, a lot of people, they hold back and they don't want to come because of family and stuff like that. And that was one of our big issues. But you know what? It's a 3-hour flight. And it just seems like now that people are realizing how open it is, they're not bringing their politics down here. They're just coming in open and embracing our openness.
Well, that's great. I mean, so you've got this real estate company down there. And there's obviously... God only makes so much land, and so, you've got this influx of people, and where are all these people? How are you helping them get the houses that they are wanting to get when you have demand that is just astronomical with supply that is a little bit lighter? Like, what are you guys doing to be able to help your clients that you're getting to know?
Well, you know what? Believe it or not, there still is a lot of land down here. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people moving down, and so it is going to start to shrink. But right now, we're really not seeing too much of an issue, especially, with the turn in real estate right now with the interest rates going up. It's not like it was a year or two ago where, it was such a such a seller's market where all these buyers, they were fighting over the price. So it's slowed down a bit, but there are still plenty of houses, to be had down here. And in all price ranges, too, to be honest with you.
And building. They have not slowed. The building is going, they're building subdivisions everywhere of 200-plus houses constantly. And it just, every day you see more farmland being swallowed up, and they're just building.
With gas stoves.
I was going to say with gas generators and stuff.
With gas generators and gas stoves.
You beat us. That's going to be our new sales punch, Stefan. And come on down, and we're going to include a gas stove with every new purchase.
And a dozen eggs. And it does.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Depends the price level of the house for the eggs.
Right. Come on down. A dozen eggs. Screw the gas stove.
No, that's the down payment. That's the down payment is a couple dozen eggs.
Exactly.
You don't need 20 grand. You just need a couple dozen eggs.
Hey,
right. Exactly.
So here's where I really struggle, because last year, Michael Caputo, a very dear family friend, very well known, worked in the Trump White House. He lives in Florida. I took our 4-year-old son to go and visit with him, and I looked at houses in the Fort Myers area, Naples, Ave Maria, and my family was extremely close to making the move, but we didn't do it because of all of our current family here. We just did not make the break. But you guys do still have family in the Hamburg area, in Erie County, in Western New York. So when it comes to making that break, saying, screw it, we're leaving the People's Republic of New York and going to Florida, like, how much happier are you even after you made that decision to say, okay, my family's in New York, but I'm getting out and going to Florida?
You have no idea the happiness. You can live every day. People are worried about hurricanes, and, yes, they hit, and that's unfortunate. But you know what? It's such a small percentage of, places that are actually destroyed. And don't get me wrong, it's terrible what happened down on Fort Myers Beach and all that. But, I guess if you just choose the correct area and, you do your research and that, you can live every day and not have to worry about no sunshine and, the gray cloudiness and snowy cold of Buffalo.
Well, it's funny because when we were having all those snowstorms over Thanksgiving and Christmas, somebody said, well, at least in Buffalo, you don't have to escape your houses to be able to get through a snowstorm. And then all you got to do is get a 6-pack of beer, and then you're fine to be able to do that. But in Florida, you have to, escape your houses if a hurricane's coming. But I don't know, you move back right away. It's like everything gets built up. When you talk about the bridge that was destroyed because of the hurricane, I can't remember which one it was. And it was up in like 4 days. It was like all these people are going to be stuck on there. No, it's like, if you want to have a perfect study of what smaller government can do, Florida is the perfect example of what smaller government does. I mean, you can't do it any better than DeSantis. I don't think he's going to run because I think he's having too much fun down there. So everyone's like, oh, DeSantis in 24. I don't think he's going to run. I mean, I don't know, Stefan. Do you think that's just not a thing?
Well, I think Dave and Kelly are lucky because he's your governor and not ours.
Yeah, I know, right?
100%.
So,
and to be honest, the feeling down here is the Florida people, we're all selfish. We don't really, at this point, want him to run because we don't want to lose him for everything he's doing for us, especially the freedoms we had through COVID. Within a month and a half, it was basically back to living regular life. My son, one of my sons flew down from New York, and he was like, holy cow, you guys can go for dinner. You can go out here. You can go do. There's no mask. You can live your life. And you guys were under, the totalitarian lockdowns, and I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah, it was nuts. So obviously with your experience in real estate in Florida, especially over the COVID lockdowns, did you see a spike or just more people inquiring and buying a house in Florida who were from so-called, blue states like New York, Massachusetts, Illinois, California? Do you have a lot of folks from out of town saying, I need some Florida real estate?
Absolutely. The majority of my search going right now for my clients is from people from New York. I have a ton of people that just want to move down or, putting the feelers out for, retirement, or in a couple of years. I've got a lot of people looking. So, yes, it absolutely did spike.
Okay, and last question for you. What would you say to anyone currently living in New York State who are thinking of basically cutting the cord and saying, you know what, I'm going to Florida? Dave and Kelly, what would you say to those folks?
Do it now.
Yes, absolutely. Don't wait. We
said
struggled,
that too fast.
like I said. Well, that's the thing. Like, we struggled because both of our boys, who are in their 20s, late 20s, early 30s, both of them decided to stay. But you know what? It's a 3-hour flight away. So you have to do it for yourself, even if your family is kind of like, oh, I don't want you to. You have to make yourself happy. In the long run, I think that's what you have to do. And if moving to Florida is what's going to make you happy, do it. You won't have any regrets, and our only regret is not doing it sooner.
And we do miss our boys on a daily basis, quite a bit. But, the quality of life and what you can actually live life down here. That's easy. We're back in Buffalo. And you're both born and raised Buffalonians. And it always is technically home, but it just seems like you're just existing and just, from paycheck to paycheck and taxes and the weather and everything else. Down here, you just, every day you can do something and live life, and you just take for granted the sun's going to be shining and warm tomorrow because it is.
And everywhere we go, it seems there is a Buffalo connection. You can walk into a store or restaurant, wherever, and everybody, of course, you have your Bills stuff on, and everybody's like, oh, go Bills. Where are you from? I'm from this, Cheektowaga, Hamburg, Orchard Park, whatever. There's always somebody every single day that we run into.
That's awesome. Well, I'm really happy for you guys, and I hope you big success with your real estate company and all the new people that are going to be still flowing down into Florida for this. So it's really great having you on.
Amen to that. And if folks,
thank you so much.
And if folks want to find you, can they find you either on Facebook or the Google machine? When it comes, if they are really looking for a home, how can they find you, folks?
That's actually what we, the Buffalo people, because Buffalo people, we all stick together. And we'd like to reach out because, and help keep Buffalo people's connection down here. So it'd be the Kelly Niles Realtor would be her Facebook page if you look up Kelly Niles Realtor. And then
or kellyniles.com, or you can reach me on my cell phone at 386-287-2233. 2221.
And can you give the phone number one more time in case people aren't fast enough getting a pen?
Sure, absolutely. It's 386-287-2221.
All right, awesome. That's David and Kelly Niles. Thanks so much for joining us, and God bless you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye now. Yeah, I mean, we have 4 kids, and especially young kids. And the frustrating part of winter is, what the hell do we do?
It was just said it last night. It was like 6 o'clock and it's pitch black and the game's over and, everybody's grouchy anyways. And I was like, this is when the winters get long. And then this morning driving, taking the kids to school, and there was like this odd haze. It was like not a normal morning gray. It was like, and I didn't know, I was laughing with my daughter Bridget, and I said, maybe it's because the Bills lost. I'm not really sure. Like maybe it's that extra like kind of red gray. So anyways.
Well, we're going to call Dave and Kelly and buy a house in Florida.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, this is Ann Horan in for Mike Sparazza, who had the nerve to have a baby. I got to plug our radio and our podcasts. If you go to financialguysmedia.com, you'll see all the different podcasts on the network. At the Twitter machine, it's at FinGuys, and then Facebook and Instagram, The Financial Guys. Now, even me personally, like even when we lived in the People's Republic of Hamburg and then moved to Elma, like we actually use TFG Home and Auto for all of those different services. And every single year, Mike Sparazza says, hey, give me, and it's true. He says, he literally, just like the commercial, give me 15 minutes, let me shop around, and I'll find you good deals. And every single year, we got better coverage and our costs went down.
Can I tell you, so when I first started here, I went to him as well, and I was like, hey, listen, I just bought a house, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, I think we're going to have to wait a little while because you've got too many accidents on your cars. I was like, that's not me. Those are my kids. There were too many accidents. My one son took my car, backed into the pickup truck. So 2 cars got smashed in one outing. Was still in the driveway. Anyways, we've had multiple things. He's like, you're going to have to wait until some of those fall off before I can save you any money.
Hit that busload of nuns. That was terrible. Your rates are going to go up.
Oh, my goodness.
So do you want to give a plug to all the different services here at Financial Guys? Because there's so many.
Oh, my goodness.
You know what I mean?
We have Social Security. We've got financial planning of all kinds of things. We've got Dave Ramsey certified professionals. We have
college
planning. Oh my gosh, you're putting me on the spot here, but
well, you work here.
I know, right?
I'm literally just the guest.
No, I do, but it's really your one-stop shop. The Financial Guys can literally do everything that you need to do with any kind of dollar that's in your pocket or you change jobs and you have a 401k that you need to roll over into something else. Somebody here is going to be able to take care of that and try to find some kind of way to mitigate your tax exposure, try to come up with a plan that is going to make it so you can have the most amount of money possible for you when you want to go and hang up your keys to not have to go to work anymore. So it's really a great environment, and there's not one way that one person is going to be able to have a plan. It's so individualized, and everyone takes so much time to be able to individualize a plan for each individual person. So it's really a great place, and I'm super happy to be here.
Amen to that. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Mike and Mychajliw, and yet in this edition, the Mychajliw and Horan and Mychajliw.
Well, yeah, because I'm in the lead seat.
You're in the driver's seat. Thanks so much for joining us. Call the Financial Guys for any financial planning or any services like that. Believe me, big government wants to take your money. They want to take it and keep it in your pocket.
We want to make sure that you get to keep as much money as possible.
Amen to that. Thanks for joining us.